Have you ever witnessed nature's most unexpected alliance form in the face of death? Deep in the Amazon's heart, an aging gorilla found himself in the crushing coils of a massive anaconda, his strength failing against the serpent's relentless power. What happened when a lone lioness, thousands of miles from her natural habitat, witnessed this brutal attack would shatter every law of the wild and redefine what we thought possible about compassion between natural enemies? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The Varzea Research Station exists at the convergence of impossible ecosystems, where the mighty Amazon River creates seasonal floodplains that transform the landscape into a living laboratory of adaptive evolution. This remote corner of Brazil's wilderness serves as home to an extraordinary collection of displaced wildlife. Animals that have found themselves far from their natural habitats due to illegal trafficking, climate change, or human intervention, now living together in ways that challenge every rule of natural behavior. Towering cecropia trees rise from the flooded forest floor like cathedral pillars, their massive trunks creating a complex network of aerial highways where howler monkeys swing alongside imported African primates. The research station's unique mission, rehabilitating exotic animals that can never return to their original homes, has created an unprecedented ecosystem where survival depends not on traditional territorial boundaries, but on adaptation and unlikely alliances. This isn't your typical wildlife sanctuary story. What you're about to witness transcends every assumption about predator instinct and species loyalty. In this aquatic wilderness where the laws of nature bend under extraordinary circumstances, an act of courage would unfold that challenged the very definition of natural behavior. It's not about hunting territories or survival competition. It's about something far more profound that occurs when compassion overrides millions of years of evolutionary programming. The wet season transforms Varzea into a floating world where land and water blur into an endless maze of channels, lagoons, and temporary islands. Here, in this ever-changing landscape, animals that would never encounter each other in the wild have learned to coexist in ways that baffle researchers and rewrite scientific understanding of interspecies relationships. During the height of flood season, when water levels rise 30 feet above dry season marks, the forest becomes a vertical habitat where ground-dwelling creatures must adapt or perish. It was in this transformed environment, among the flooded giants of the Amazon, that nature would present its most extraordinary test of courage, a moment when the impossible would become inevitable, and the bonds between natural enemies would prove stronger than the instincts that should have divided them. In the heart of Varzea's flooded canopy lived Bwana, an aging mountain gorilla whose journey to the Amazon represented one of wildlife trafficking's most tragic stories. The 60-year-old silverback had been rescued from illegal captivity 15 years earlier, his massive frame bearing the scars of a life stolen from African mountains and confined to concrete enclosures. Now, in his twilight years, Bwana had found unexpected peace among the cecropia trees, his gentle intelligence earning him respect from creatures that had never seen his kind before. Despite his advanced age, Bwana retained the dignified presence that marked him as a natural leader. His silver-streaked back caught the filtered jungle light as he moved carefully through his arboreal home, each movement deliberate and considered. The old gorilla's dark eyes held depths of experience that spoke to decades of adaptation, survival, and the quiet wisdom that comes from enduring life's harshest trials. His powerful hands, though showing signs of age, remained capable of incredible gentleness when interacting with the sanctuary's younger residents. Several hundred meters away, prowling the elevated walkways that connected the research station's observation platforms, lived Zuri, a lioness whose presence in the Amazon defied every natural law. Rescued from a bankrupt circus that had abandoned her in Brazil, Zuri had adapted to life in the flooded forest with remarkable resilience. Her golden coat, though darkened by the constant humidity, still bore the regal bearing of African royalty displaced by human cruelty. Zuri's adaptation to arboreal life had been extraordinary to witness. Where most lions would have perished in such an alien environment, she had developed climbing skills that allowed her to navigate the canopy with surprising grace. Her powerful limbs, built for savanna hunting, had learned to find purchase on wet bark and swaying branches with the determination of a survivor who refused to be defeated by circumstances beyond her control. Neither Bwana nor Zuri knew that their paths would soon converge in a way that would challenge everything researchers thought they understood about territorial behavior, predator instinct, and the capacity for heroism that transcends species boundaries in the face of mortal danger. Yakri, the first sign of trouble, came as a subtle shift in the Amazon's constant symphony of life. Zuri, resting on a sturdy platform 30 feet above the dark water, lifted her golden head as the familiar chorus of jungle sounds began to change. The perpetual chatter of parrots and monkeys grew sporadic, then ceased entirely in a wave of silence that spread through the canopy like ripples across still water. Her predator instincts, sharpened by years of surviving in an alien environment, immediately recognized the pattern. Something powerful was moving through the flooded forest, something that commanded respect from every creature within its territory. Zuri's amber eyes scanned the maze of branches and vines, searching for the source of disturbance that had triggered this widespread alarm among the forest's residents. Meanwhile, Bwana was experiencing his own moment of unease as he foraged peacefully among the cecropia fruits. The aging gorilla's weathered hands paused in their gentle harvesting, as his sensitive ears detected a sound that didn't belong to the natural rhythm of the forest. It was subtle, a displacement of water that spoke of massive movement beneath the surface, combined with the almost inaudible scrape of scales against submerged tree trunks. The old silverback's experience had taught him to trust these environmental warnings. His dark eyes turned toward the darker channels between the trees, where morning shadows created perfect camouflage for predators that preferred to remain unseen. Something ancient and powerful was stirring in the depths of the flooded forest, following scent trails and water currents with the patience of an apex predator that had survived in these waters for decades. From her elevated vantage point, Zuri could see what Bwana could not, the subtle wake patterns moving through the dark water below, converging on the area where the old gorilla continued his morning meal. The lioness's hunting instincts immediately analyzed the movement patterns, recognizing the purposeful approach of something far more dangerous than any creature she had encountered in her adapted life among the trees. The stage was being set for an encounter that would test every survival skill both animals had developed during their years of adaptation to this impossible ecosystem. What emerged from the dark waters beneath Bwana's feeding tree was a creature of nightmares made real. The massive green anaconda that slowly surfaced was easily 30 feet of pure muscular power, its olive-colored scales glistening with the dark water of the flooded forest. This ancient predator had ruled these waterways for decades, its massive girth speaking to countless successful hunts that had eliminated every challenge to its dominance. The serpent's approach was calculated with the precision of millions of years of evolutionary perfection. Its enormous head, larger than a horse's skull, moved through the water with barely a ripple, while its body remained mostly submerged until the critical moment of attack. The anaconda had been tracking Bwana's scent for hours, analyzing the gorilla's daily patterns and waiting for the perfect opportunity when the aging primate would be most vulnerable. The attack came with devastating swiftness. The anaconda exploded from the water like a green missile, its massive jaws gaping open to reveal rows of backward-curving teeth designed to grip and hold, while its body did the killing work. Bwana, caught completely off guard while reaching for a particularly succulent fruit, had no time to react before 28 feet of muscle wrapped around his aging frame. The old gorilla's roar of shock and pain echoed through the forest canopy as the anaconda's coils began their deadly work. Unlike the quick kills preferred by other predators, the giant snake's method was methodical and terrifying. Each breath Bwana took allowed the coils to tighten further, creating a one-way constriction that would slowly squeeze the life from his powerful body. From her vantage point above, Zuri watched in horror as the gentle giant who had become part of her adopted world was systematically crushed by one of South America's most formidable predators. The anaconda's positioning was diabolical in its effectiveness. Wrapped around the tree trunk with Bwana trapped in its coils, the serpent had created a killing chamber where the gorilla's superior strength meant nothing against the relentless physics of constriction. Bwana's struggles grew weaker with each passing moment, his dark eyes beginning to show the glazed look that preceded unconsciousness and death. Zuri's response to witnessing Bwana's mortal peril revealed the profound internal conflict that raged within every fiber of her being. As a lioness, her evolutionary programming screamed that this was nature's way, predator consuming prey in the eternal cycle that had shaped life for millions of years. Yet something deeper, forged through years of shared exile in this impossible ecosystem, rebelled against the cold logic of survival. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The lioness paced frantically along her elevated platform, her powerful claws extending and retracting as she wrestled with instincts that pulled her in opposite directions. Every rational thought told her that intervening in an anaconda attack was suicide. These serpents were capable of crushing creatures far larger than herself, and water was their absolute domain where her natural advantages meant nothing. But as Zuri watched Bwana's struggles growing weaker, memories flooded through her consciousness. She remembered the gentle way the old gorilla had shared fruit with her during her first terrifying weeks in the Amazon, when starvation had nearly claimed her life. She recalled how his presence had provided comfort during thunderstorms that reminded her too painfully of the circus trainer's whips. The aging silverback had become more than a fellow exile. He had become family in ways that transcended species boundaries. From various positions throughout the canopy, other residents of the research station watched the unfolding tragedy with their own species-specific responses. Howler monkeys that had benefited from Bwana's protection huddled in distant trees, their mournful calls creating a chorus of grief that seemed to acknowledge the loss of their gentle guardian. Colorful macaws that had learned to trust the gorilla's peaceful nature circled overhead, their harsh cries adding to the cacophony of distress. The research station's human inhabitants remained oblivious to the drama unfolding in the forest depths, their morning routines continuing undisturbed while one of their most beloved residents fought for his life mere hundreds of meters away. The isolation that made Varzea perfect for wildlife rehabilitation also meant that Bwana's only hope for survival lay with creatures who had no evolutionary reason to risk their lives for his sake. Zuri's decision to intervene came not from careful calculation, but from something far more primitive and profound than survival instinct. The lioness began her descent from the observation platform, with movements that spoke to a resolve that had crystallized beyond the reach of rational thought. Her powerful limbs found purchase on wet bark and swaying vines as she navigated the vertical maze of the flooded forest, driven by bonds that transcended every natural law she had ever known. What made Zuri's approach extraordinary was her apparent understanding of the tactical challenge she faced. Unlike the impulsive charge that might be expected from a desperate predator, the lioness moved with calculated stealth that spoke to her circus-trained intelligence, combined with years of adaptation to arboreal hunting. She had learned that success in the canopy required patience, precision, and the ability to use the environment itself as a weapon. The anaconda, completely focused on the methodical process of crushing its prey, remained unaware of the golden shadow moving through the branches above. The serpent's ancient brain, evolved for aquatic ambush hunting, wasn't programmed to detect aerial threats. This blind spot in the snake's otherwise perfect predatory awareness would prove to be the crucial weakness that Zuri's desperate strategy depended upon. From neighboring trees, other wildlife began to sense the shift in the forest's emotional atmosphere. The same creatures that had fled in terror from the anaconda's emergence now seemed drawn back by something unprecedented. The scent of courage overriding fear, the unmistakable chemical signature of a predator preparing to risk everything for another's survival. A family of spider monkeys that had been among Bwana's closest companions in the canopy began vocalizing in patterns that wildlife researchers had never documented before. Their calls seemed designed not to warn away the approaching lioness, but to encourage her desperate mission. Even the colorful toucan pair that nested near Bwana's favorite feeding spot positioned themselves as if to witness something they instinctively understood would be historic. The stage was set for a confrontation that would challenge every assumption about territorial behavior, predatory instinct, and the capacity for heroism that could emerge when survival took a backseat to something far more powerful. Zuri's attack on the anaconda came from directly above, with the devastating force of a golden missile launched from the canopy. The lioness had positioned herself on a branch directly over the serpent's massive head, timing her leap to coincide with the moment when the snake was most vulnerable, completely focused on maintaining its deadly grip on Bwana's weakening form. The impact was thunderous, echoing through the flooded forest like the collision of two freight trains. Zuri's powerful claws found purchase on the anaconda's thick neck, just behind the skull where the spine was most accessible to her killing bite. Her circus training, which had taught her to perform precise acrobatic maneuvers, now served her in the most unlikely theater of operation imaginable. The anaconda's reaction was immediate and terrifying. The massive serpent, startled by this unprecedented aerial assault, momentarily loosened its grip on Bwana to redirect its attention toward this new threat. The snake's enormous head whipped around with surprising speed, its jaw gaping open to reveal a mouth capable of swallowing prey the size of a human being. But Zuri had anticipated this defensive response. Instead of maintaining her position on the serpent's neck, where she would be vulnerable to its striking head, the lioness used her momentum to execute a maneuver that would have impressed her former circus trainers. She rolled along the anaconda's muscular body, using her claws to maintain grip while positioning herself where the snake's massive head couldn't reach her. The battle that followed was unlike anything in the natural world. Zuri's strategy revealed an intelligence that went far beyond instinctual behavior. She seemed to understand that her only chance of victory lay in disrupting the anaconda's constriction without allowing herself to become trapped in those same deadly coils. Each of the lioness's attacks was precisely targeted at pressure points where her claws could inflict maximum damage to the snake's ability to maintain its crushing grip. Her years of navigating the challenging environment of the flooded forest had given her an understanding of leverage and balance that now proved crucial in her desperate battle against one of South America's most formidable predators, Arichat. The battle reached its crescendo when the anaconda made a tactical error that would prove fatal to its hunting success. Frustrated by its inability to dislodge the lioness from its body, the massive serpent attempted to use the tree trunk as leverage to crush both Zuri and Bwana simultaneously. The snake began wrapping additional coils around the cecropia's thick trunk, seeking to create enough pressure to eliminate both threats at once. But this maneuver exposed the anaconda's most vulnerable point, the section of its body where maximum tension was required to maintain its constricting power. Zuri, with the tactical intelligence honed through years of surviving impossible circumstances, recognized this weakness immediately. The lioness repositioned herself with acrobatic precision, moving along the serpent's body until she reached the critical pressure point where her intervention would have maximum impact. What happened next defied every law of physics that should have governed the confrontation. Zuri's powerful jaws clamped down on the anaconda's body at the exact point where the snake's coils were under greatest stress. Her bite, combined with the leverage created by her body weight, created a disruption in the serpent's constriction that sent shockwaves through its entire muscular system. The anaconda's response was immediate and desperate. The massive predator began thrashing violently, its enormous body creating waves in the dark water below as it fought to maintain control over both its original prey and this unprecedented attacker. But Zuri's grip was unbreakable. Her circus-trained strength focused on the single objective of saving her friend's life. The critical moment came when the anaconda's coils loosened just enough for Bwana to draw his first full breath in several terrifying minutes. The aging gorilla's survival instincts, dormant during his near-death experience, suddenly roared back to life. With oxygen flooding back into his system, Bwana began contributing to his own rescue, using his remaining strength to push against the snake's weakening coils. The tide of battle had turned, but the anaconda was far from defeated. The ancient predator still possessed enough power to kill both of its opponents, and its fury at being challenged was reaching deadly proportions. The anaconda's retreat was as calculated as its initial attack had been, but now driven by survival instinct rather than predatory confidence. The massive serpent, recognizing that its prey had become more costly than any meal was worth, began the process of disengaging from a battle that had turned against every evolutionary advantage it possessed. With fluid grace that belied its enormous size, the snake released its remaining coils from around Bwana and slithered back toward the dark water that represented safety and familiar territory. Zuri maintained her defensive position until the last ripple of the anaconda's retreat disappeared beneath the surface, her golden eyes scanning the water for any sign that the predator might return. Only when she was certain the threat had passed did the lioness allow her muscles to relax, the adrenaline that had fueled her impossible victory finally beginning to ebb from her system. Bwana's recovery was slow but steady, his aged lungs working to process the oxygen he had been denied during those terrifying minutes of constriction. The old gorilla's dark eyes found Zuri's amber gaze, And something passed between them that transcended every boundary of species, habitat, and evolutionary programming. It was a moment of recognition that would forever alter their relationship and redefine their understanding of family bonds. What happened next challenged every assumption about interspecies communication. Bwana, despite his weakness, extended one massive hand toward Zuri in a gesture that could only be interpreted as gratitude. The lioness, still breathing heavily from her exertions, approached cautiously and touched her nose to the gorilla's knuckles, a moment of connection that seemed to seal an alliance forged in mutual respect and shared survival. The other wildlife residents of Varzea began emerging from their hiding places, their various calls creating a chorus that sounded remarkably like celebration. Research station personnel, drawn by the unusual commotion, arrived to find Bwana and Zuri resting peacefully together in a scene that would require them to rewrite every protocol about interspecies relationships in their sanctuary. From that day forward, the unlikely pair became inseparable, their bond serving as living proof that courage and compassion could overcome even the most fundamental divisions in the natural world. The story of Zuri's heroic rescue of Bwana became legendary throughout the wildlife rehabilitation community, sparking revolutionary discussions about the emotional capacity of displaced animals and their ability to form bonds that transcend natural boundaries. Researchers at Varzea documented behavioral changes in both animals that suggested their shared trauma had created a permanent alliance based on mutual protection and companionship. The unlikely partnership between circus lioness and trafficked gorilla inspired changes in rehabilitation protocols worldwide. Their story proved that animals forced to adapt to alien environments could develop relationships impossible in their natural habitats, creating new models of interspecies cooperation that challenged fundamental assumptions about territorial behavior and predatory instinct. Most profoundly, Zuri and Bwana's bond reminded the world that heroism isn't limited by species, habitat, or evolutionary programming. In that desperate moment above the dark Amazon waters, when survival logic dictated abandonment, the lioness chose something greater. She chose to risk everything for a friend who had shown her kindness in a world that had shown them both only cruelty. Their story continues to inspire wildlife workers facing impossible rescue scenarios, proving that courage and compassion can emerge in the most unlikely circumstances. The Varzea Research Station remains home to their extraordinary partnership, a living testament to the idea that family is defined not by blood or species, but by the willingness to stand together against the darkness. In the heart of the Amazon, where two displaced souls found each other, their legacy reminds us that the bonds of loyalty and love can overcome any obstacle that nature or humanity places in their path. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.